Hello everyone, welcome to another rapid speedrun game with the white pieces against Rudo. He's rated over 1600. Let's see how he responds to the King's Gambit. Okay, he declines it and opens his bishop, creates a little pawn chain. We're going to develop our knight and control the h4 square from his queen. As he develops the knight towards the center, we can develop a piece towards the center and prepare castling to get our king to safety. He plays h6, which clearly doesn't threaten anything, so I'm going to go along with my castling plan. And now my rook and my light square bishop are both looking at the f7 square, the weakest square at the start of the chess game for black. It's only defended once by the king. So he goes bishop e7, simple developing move. And you already have interesting things like bishop takes pawn, king takes, pawn takes, with some knight discoveries. I mean, it's pretty early to do that, but you can start thinking about it. You can start calculating and see what you need. One of the things that you would want is to open up your rook by taking a central pawn with a flank pawn. Now the rook is open. Now the knight can get out of the way in one turn. So now it's definitely more dangerous. Now bishop takes f7 is more possible, right? With the pawn out of the way. So he recaptured with the knight. He's hitting the bishop and the knight. We don't want him to take the bishop, right? We don't care about the knight. Now, automatically this was a game-losing blunder, and this guy's rated 1605. It's only move 6, and it's fairly obvious. It's not exactly a hard calculation. What we do is we look for forcing moves, right? You can't play something like d4 because your bishop's loose. So unless you're going to play bishop b3, which is what a lot of you guys would automatically do once you see this position, let's look for forcing moves and see if those work. Knight takes knight, and now you can see the easy convergence on f7. We're already castled, a rook in the game, a bishop in the game. It looks like he moved nothing but one little bishop here. You see the contrast and what it looks like has been done. It looks like we just had more moves. And so now we could take with the rook or the bishop. They're both completely devastating. It's more natural to take with a lesser value piece, you hear me say. But calculation will override that at times. So if he moves to the right on the F file, he's going into discoveries. If he goes to the left, I mean, equally terrible. And you can do whatever you want. You're already winning. You're only up a pawn, but you're completely winning. You could get in your queen with check and threats. When he moves his king, your queen will be under attack. So you can keep that in mind as well. You could just develop your knight. There's so many different moves, but instead of doing queen g4 and... I mean, that is really strong though. Queen g4, he moves his king, I don't know, anywhere. I mean, you could take this. His rook is hanging. If he wants to save the rook, he would have to move the knight. I guess it works, but I mean, I really just want to play d4. I don't really care if queen g4 is... I mean, obviously queen g4 is not a bad move. Like, it definitely is a good move, but it's not like check, checkmate. So I'd rather just play d4 because I want to just blow open access to the king, open up my bishop, and I couldn't care less about pawns. Like, even if this pawn was hanging, which it's clearly not, I would throw it off the board. He moves his king anyway, but that's a funny move. I'm going to throw in this check. I mean, you could do a bunch of stuff. There's pawn check, but he's likely to go back, but then his king is kind of stuck. The one thing I would... the one thing I wouldn't do is take and let him queen trade because that ruins all your fun. So he just resigns. And we will click new opponent because there's really nothing to look at there. That was a 1600 who got destroyed by the King's Gambit in 5 moves. So now let's see how Gordo, 1965 from Argentina, rated almost 1500. Okay, so we don't get a King's Gambit, but we'll still do the pawn duo. And let's see what he does. If he was born in 1965, we're going to get some old man chess. This is not old man chess. F5. What in the world? What in tarnation? What is this? Okay, so what's the threat? He's hitting my pawn. What's the drawback? He weakens this diagonal, but he has g6 at the moment. Also, the pawn is currently hanging, but that would allow probably d5 is his idea. If I had to guess, but then queen h5 is winning. I'm going to take this pawn. I mean, you could push, gain space, restrict his knight, and have a great position. You could ignore him and develop a knight or something and be fine. But I'm just going to take the free pawn and see what he does because this comes with a threat. That's the reason. The threat is queen h5, and he can't play g6 because of our pawn. So he stops queen h5 now, and he'll go here and take back the pawn later. Interesting idea. Kind of fun. So let's play it. We've never seen this in any of our speedruns, I'm pretty sure. So it's fun. So we know he wants to go d5. We know that in advance, so we want to be able to play d4 to meet that. But we don't want to have to take back with our queen. So let's develop our knight. And if he goes d5, we could play d4, getting our pawn presence and keeping him from pushing further. Okay, what? He plays h6. I guess he was stopping that, but that's kind of a crazy move. I'm just going to break open in the center while opening a new piece and ignore what he's doing. I'm up a pawn, but I don't intend on keeping it. Like, I'm not going to try to defend the f5 pawn. He does have some really weird light square weaknesses around his king. His bishops aren't open yet. Both of mine, the pawns have moved. Okay, so now he opens one. He's ready to take back his pawn. We could force a queen trade line. Takes, 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 takes. Knight in the center. Threatens this. Also can win the bishop pair. With bishop here coming, maybe we get an exchange. It's possible. I'm going to go for that. So he throws in an intermezzo check saying no queen trade, but abandoning his king and then opening up my queen line and not having his queen to contest it. So I don't know about this for him, but if I go bishop here, he's just going to take with his queen and my bishop's in front of my queen. So I'd rather block with my knight. A more natural square. He still takes with the queen. He still takes with the queen. His queen's now in the center. Maybe one day we can hit it with a bishop or something like that. We're still up our pawn. We should probably develop. Now, you can't go here. And we can't go queen e2 and support it without blocking our light square bishop. So we have two options. Bishop here, developing this first. Also protecting our pawn, which is actually still hanging. Trade, trade, trade. Maybe our knight can hop in here then. Also interesting. He has so many weak squares. I mean, this is going to end badly for him. The other option is to put our queen nice in the center, but that runs into this. So let's go here. Let's develop and defend the pawn. We know we're going to lose, but that just equalizes the material, right? It's the pawn I said we're not going to hang on to. Now we can't castle because of his queen. So let's take his bishop, so he has to move his queen. Now we can castle if we want. Now we can go bishop e3 if we want. and potentially castle queenside. His position has lots of nice holds in it, and so I don't see what's wrong with castling kingside. I mean, we did move the f pawn, but yeah, I'm just gonna castle. Normal move. My position's defended, whereas his has a bunch of holes. And he's still at least three moves away from castling kingside, which is weird. So he might try to castle queenside, also somewhat weird, because he is missing a c pawn. But he just develops a knight. Normal move. Very normal move. We could develop our bishop, get our last piece in the game. What do we think about that? Well, if his knight ever tries to harass us, we would want a place to go to. We wouldn't want to give it up. f2 is a nice square, but the knight would hit it. g1's a nice square, but the king's in the way. So let's do prophylaxis, because we want to get off the diagonal anyway, and make room for the bishop, so that when we put it here and he hits it, we could go bishop g1, a nice beautiful square, controlling his knight. His forward knight jumps. So now he castles long, and generally that entails pawn storms on opposite flanks. But first, I'd like to get my last piece in on the mix, while his bishop is not in on the mix. He might want to spend a turn at king b8 at some point, trying to bring his king to further safety and also protect the a7 pawn. He currently strikes out at the center. His rook is aligned with our queen, so we have to watch out for that. What's the threat? He's attacking our pawn. Maybe he wants to push. And also maybe push this one. Maybe he just wants to do a lot of things with these pawns and hurt us in the center. Drawback. Weaken some squares. And if we take, we're opening up our rook against his queen. So let's do that. This f-pawn is kind of in the way. We don't want it there unless it's part of a pawn duo. But we gave that up in the opening, which we didn't need to do, by the way, but we did. So he takes back. Now he's hitting our queen first, so we do need to get out of the way. But we don't want to block our pieces or run into knight jumps. So this one or this one. If we go here, any knight jumps can hurt us. No. So let's go here. Now our rooks are connected before blacks. And our king is safer. It's just nicely tucked in the corner. He would need two moves to tuck his in the corner. And with those two moves, we would make progress in our position. We could improve the knight. We could begin a pawn storm. He retreats the queen away from our rook, which does make some sense. But it gets it a little further away from my king. Okay, so now what do we do? You could just throw your rooks in the center, but I mean, I was hoping for something more exciting. I mean, it is kind of principled to go rook ad1. Just put it on the open file. He could just develop his bishop, connect his rooks. And what's the big deal? I kind of want to attack his king. So I'm going to go for the pawn storm idea, and I'm going to start it with a3. Not a4, giving both of his pieces the square to blockade it. But instead I'm going to go a3, b4, b5, dislodge his knight, and then take it from there. So he does develop his bishop, connects his rooks, protects his center, but blocks his other rook. He's probably going to stick it in. Yeah, he's probably going to go back for extra defense, something like, I don't know, some type of arrangement. In any case, I think I'm going to continue with my pawn storm. You have to kind of be careful with the weaknesses you create. Make sure he can't place a piece there long term. But the queen's controlling c4, so The queen can't come. We could push and then see how he reacts. Our bishop's targeting the pawn. The knight's defending the pawn, so it starts a chain reaction. So he jumps his knight forward. What's the threat? Well, he's hitting the bishop. It's the most obvious threat. He wants to trade it. So if we attack his knight, he could just take the bishop. And then we get a piece, but then he can get a rook. Maybe we get a pawn, but I'm not going to calculate that. So let's go where we want it to go. It's the reason we moved the king in the first place. Super solid, super long range piece. All the way from G1, touching A7. Look at that. In one turn, teleports to the other side. And that's why they're strong. And how do you handle B5? Do you play A6 and weaken your king further? And now your dark squares are toast? Yes, that's exactly what he does. However, this only encourages B5. It doesn't stop it. See, that's a funny way of thinking that this somehow stops it, but it encourages it because if you take queen or knight in and the semi-open B file and one less pawn defender, works for me, and bishop in here. But if you go bishop in here, he's going to try to trade bishops right away. So I want to kind of milk it further, get a little more out of it. So we're going to still play b5, just send it up the board. Why wouldn't we? So why we played a3 and b4. He takes. Now, it would be kind of cool to get the queen in on the action. And then any rook pile up is pretty annoying. However, getting the knight on the action also fairly annoying. Controlling the dark squares, helping out our bishop. Yeah, that could be a real nuisance. It does undefend this square, but I think for the time being, none of that, like, that doesn't matter at all. If I take with the queen, do I have any more concrete threat, though? He can easily just block this pawn. So I think I'm going to go with the knight. I'm going to go with the knight. That also opens my c-pawn in case I want to thrust it, but I want to do something faster. I already opened semi-open A file, semi-open B file, semi-open C file. Now I just want to use my pieces and get in there. So he goes here, which is a good move to defend the dark squares. I was thinking, what if I go and attack his rook? He cannot block with a bishop. He has to move the rook somewhere. And that construction in itself is just super annoying. But it doesn't contain a knockout blow necessarily. But his king is in a really bad spot. A really bad spot. So how do we do this? You could always push the A pawn at some point. But I mean, I have pieces. So let's start with this and see how he reacts. We only have 2 minutes. Maybe we just like rook lift to the C file. Just put a rook here and he kind of can't move, I feel like. So how do we do that? 1, 2, but we need to move the knight. We kind of want the knight here though. Oh, he goes off of the D file. Weird. I thought he would lift it 1 and at least protect this square. I guess it is protected twice, but I mean, this looks like it takes forever. I don't want to wait 3 turns to make contact. Um, Although this also takes 3 turns. Decisions, decisions. Well, I can combine them. 1, 2. That takes 3 turns and kind of furthers both plans at once, which is funny. And if I go here and he uses that square, is it going anywhere? I guess he's hitting my bishop, but I can protect it. I can go here and hit it, but then I have check. Ooh, that's a nice check. Then he has to go here. What do I do there though? I don't know. Let him figure it out. I'm going to push my pawn. It comes with this idea. Comes with this idea. I like it. It's nice that it doesn't slow down either of the ideas and it furthers both at the same time. Super interesting how that works, but it does. Because we don't have to waste the move going rook b1, rook b3. It will just be rook a3. But we're down to a minute, so I need to really stop pondering funny moves and make real moves, concrete moves. See, this is an example of I wish I could pick up my c pawn and throw it off the board. Even though that would put me down a pawn, immediately rook c1 becomes the most obvious and best move in the position. So he strikes out at the center, and there is pressure on his pawn. But we're not really caring about it. We don't really care. We probably should move our knight to the center, though. Open up our other rook. I don't care about this pawn unless somehow that pawn leads to us getting checkmated. So he takes our knight, which was hitting his queen, because we moved out of the way with tempo. So it makes sense to take back, hit his queen. His queen is hitting our bishop, but we're hitting his knight with check. So it's an interesting uh, change of events. Do I have better? I don't see it. So let's take. Material's still even, but clearly our king is safer than his king. We traded a bunch of pieces, so you may think like, oh, there's no attack or whatever, but first of all, you don't need an attack to win a game. Second of all, we use that little attack to build up pressure and force him into, let's say, this position where this pawn is weak, this pawn is weak, our rooks are open, this pawn is dangerous, his king is exposed, right? So it's like we don't need like a attack bang bang checkmate type thing. It's okay if you trade some pieces. Like he forced it, right? It's not like we donated them. He forced some trades, so he moves his king and we're running out of time in a completely winning position. Our knight's hanging. Uh, this looks good. We could definitely take the pawn. That's definitely a move because it protects the knight. But just bringing this in, I'm abandoning the pawn thing because that was an idea before when the position was a little different. Lots of pieces on the board. And it wasn't nearly as free-flowing and open like this. Now it's just, like I said, if the c pawn wasn't there, rook c1 would have been the most obvious move. Now his king's on the d file, rook d1 because there's no pawns in the way, the most obvious move. So the pawns are just directing the traffic. And I'm not calculating. I probably should with 15 seconds so I can know my next move. Okay, so he's in a in a discovery. He can only go here or here. The queen's covering this. Actually, I should probably put my rook here and just watch for my back rank. And okay, he can't cross the f file though. He's stuck, so he has to go back the other way. And then hopefully he goes here so I can get my rook in for free. If he goes back, I could just check him with my knight, double check him. I don't know. I'm not going to make the best engine moves here because I have no time. I'm just going to pick a random check because everything's winning, but whatever. Okay, I should, again, probably calculate instead of just saying whatever. If he moves his king here, you don't want to go here because he's going to do that. There's a knight. Okay, he goes there, so that lets us do this for free. I don't know why he would go there. Now where can he go? He can go here, here. That can't be good. Random check because I had 5 seconds. There's a 5-second increment. So he has to go here and then double checkmate? That's pretty sweet. Double checkmate, nice. I mean, he could throw intermezzos, but the knight covers. He goes there. Double checkmate. What a checkmate. Look at that. Look at that kill zone. Beautiful. That was a nice checkmate. That's what happens when your king is in the center and or has no pawn friends. Your king needs to befriend pawns. Okay? Now you know. Let's go through the game. We have a mistake. So what? This is chess. There's going to be back and forth, ups and downs. You give the game away, you get it back. I mean, here we've always had the advantage. We didn't give black any of it, but so what? You got to think of it like a problem that you're trying to solve. This position, ooh, is a geometric problem. Let's try to solve it, right? It's not, you're way too emotionally invested as opposed to thinking of it objectively like you're trying to solve a puzzle. Anyway, we do the King's Gambit stuff against the Sicilian. He does this, which is wild, kind of cool though. I'm a fan of him trying this, even though it looks probably bad. The best move is to take the free pawn, which is interesting because I figured um, that although it's playable, maybe it wasn't absolute best. Specifically because of his move, right? Specifically because there is no real threat. And he'll just take the center and get back the pawn, and that should be some form of equality. But the engine's saying white is +1 here, so I guess if you play perfectly, you just should accept it. So anyway, we accept it. And development and center. But I wouldn't mind being black. I mean, I do hate the light square weaknesses. So assuming I can definitely get this pawn back and play d5 also, I don't hate black's position. But anyway, once he does this, he really just cements the light square weaknesses. So don't do that. Okay, this is just center and development. This was trying to go down a forcing sequence, but it's not forced at all. He doesn't have to take this. He could do what he did in the game, queen a5 check. He could take the pawn, intermezzo, and ignore you. So in hindsight, you don't have to take this pawn. You could do anything else in the position that you want. You can go bishop d3 like a normal person, defend the pawn and prepare castling. You can maybe go d5 and try to gain more space and squeeze him. We take, which is kind of neutral. He gives us a check, development, defense, center. It says white's +2, but it's not like an automatic win +2 because you can definitely mess it up. You could definitely slowly, through inaccuracies, give away the advantage, which we did. Because you're not winning a piece here. You're either taking advantage perfectly of the weak squares at the right time or you're not. So development and center and king safety. We do this just for castling, right? If you say, why'd you make this trade? Because normally I wouldn't just trade a bishop for no reason. It's 100% for castling. There's no other reason. Did you have to do it? No, you could try queen e2 to go bishop e3, which looks nice. But then if he takes, then you have to take. Still setting up bishop e3, but then it almost feels like queen e2 is a wasted move. Still totally a really good move, but I tried to go down this route where we take and castle. Just another option. But long castling also might have been more energetic, another thing to think about. And I did originally want a long castle, but considering I saw this forcing way to castle immediately, I chose this. It says white's +1.4, a little bit better. Prophylaxis and making room for the bishop. Hopefully you could see how that worked out later in the game. Development, center. Still have small lead. This is all about development. I mean, you are taking a central pawn with a flank pawn, but it's really about opening my rook. Otherwise, I might have chosen a different move, right? You do have other options. It's funny, just to let you guys know, that the engine says the best move is b4, sacking the pawn, because you can easily get a rook there. And I tell you guys all the time that in opposite side castling, your pawns don't matter. This is just proof. Anyway, we open up our rook. We have to move our queen. And we play a3. Building up for an opposite side castling pawn storm position. So you see we had at some point in the game a +2 advantage, which is almost like winning basically. But it was of a positional nature and we didn't milk it properly. We just played natural, casual developing moves. Now we're back to a relatively even position, but in practical terms, you'd much rather be white, as black has the isolated pawn and the worst king. So let's continue. So it's just a game. It's playable by both sides, but you'd rather be white. Now we go b4. With the support of a3, not a pawn sack, with the idea of b5 and collapsing his king position potentially. He hunts our bishop, and now it's extremely natural to use the cubbyhole we made. And it just goes to show you that it's not easy to play these positions. You have so many options, right? You can move any of the rooks to the center. You can retreat the bishop voluntarily so that you can put a knight in the center. But is a knight in the center even good? Is a knight on b5 any good? Should you put it there first? Should you provoke a6? Do you leave your knight here? Right? There's lots of different things you can do. So it's not as nearly as simple as someone makes it out. It's not nearly as simple as the engine says, or even when you hear me explain. Maybe I make it sound easier than it is, but it's still very difficult because you have so many choices in a position like this. So we play b4, and the engine says he should play e4 as his best shot. Dislodging our knight. Maybe it forces us into the center where he has pressure. He's opening up his bishop, so it makes a lot of sense. This guy instead goes for a different move that maybe a lot of you guys find natural. Move it towards the king and attack the bishop, right? I feel like a lot of you guys would make this move. And now you can see why king h1 was so nice. Super well defended. And boom. And just like that, from an even position, 2 moves later, he does a knight move and a pawn move. And now white's winning, plus 2.6. And that's the fickle nature of these positions. And so instead of stressing over every move, whether it actually works technically or not, just try to get the thought process correct. This is an opposite side castling game. What's the thought process? Oh, I should probably be trying to pawn storm him, even if I have to sack a pawn. And so even if I see you pushing your a pawn, a4 or b4, even if you push a4, which let's say was the wrong pawn to push because he can blockade or something, the fact that you're trying to pawn storm is what I'm looking for, right? Like that's what you should be trying to do. Whether you execute it correctly is a different story. That's knowledge and technique and whatever and patterns. But you need your head in the right direction. Otherwise, maybe you just put a rook on the central file and say, hey, my rook's on an open file. Like, that's what I was told to do. Also good, but anyway. So we take back. You could have taken back with the queen. They're both really good. They're both completely winning. And now you can see how his king is extremely unsafe super quickly that he lost that pawn. Plus 3.2. And he says this is a mistake. Improving a piece for free, causing mass devastation in his position. The one downside is it is aligned with the queen, which gives him some annoying like ideas later to try to pick up that bishop. I thought he was going to go rook d7, which he definitely should have gone, but he didn't. So if we didn't make this move, knight f to d4. Okay, so the engine's being cheeky, trying to utilize the pin. But I mean, that's just dumb. Knight d2. Oops, here and here. That could actually lead to a cool checkmating sequence. But it retreats to knight. It's whatever. a4. Okay, continue pushing the pawn. I like that one. So a4 or my move I kind of like. I'm not big fans of their other knight moves. Okay, right, we did bishop here. I also don't mind it unless it somehow fails tactically later in like 3 or 4 moves. And now a4. Proceeding with our plan, opening up our rook and trading the last defender of his king. Once that pawn is gone, these light squares become available. Yay. Now he plays e4. You see, this is just human chess. Before it said e4 was the best because it opens up the bishop, kicks away our knight, yada yada, all the other things I said. Now all of a sudden it makes the position +2 to +5, totally losing for black. You see, and that's just chess. The best moves is sometimes the worst move a turn later. Now he's forcing us to find the only move to be completely winning, jump in the center. Why? Because that protects my h2 pawn indirectly as well, because I'm hitting his queen, so he has to react. I'm also hitting his knight, so I'm also hitting his pawn, I'm also hitting his knight, I'm also looking at this. I also just opened my rook. Not good for him. He takes my knight. We have to find only winning move, take our knight back, of course. Now, he takes the bishop, and a lot of you here probably don't understand what's happening or the position. A lot of you guys probably saw this position on the board and said, wait a second, White just hung his bishop. And even if after the fact you realize, oh wait, he gets it back, in your mind, there's definitely a large portion of you who thinks that oh, he just got the bishop and he got the knight. Black just traded everything and this is equal. This is an equal position. You were probably worried that white lost their advantage or kind of messed up. This is exactly, or somewhere around here, was where I was telling you guys that we don't need the attack check checkmate. His position is so weak that even though we're not up anything, he's still losing. So he moves his king and it's +12. We're not up anything. So this should confirm for you exactly how weak his king is. And okay, he has some pieces, but without the pawns, and the pieces aren't actually touching the king, right? They're not like clustered around in on some type of football huddle. They're kind of, sprawled out a little bit. And you can't do that when I have heavies on the board and a knight in your face. Here they come. He tries to move his king, but it's mate in 3 because there's nowhere to go. The lasers are here. Where are you running? My rook's here. Where are you running? Where are you running? And what he would need is like 2 knights. A knight here and like, I don't even know. A knight somewhere else around his king. And with those 2 knights, maybe he can survive. But here, check, 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 mate. Mate in 4. Beautiful game by white. That started with this crazy variation. So anyway, good luck in your chess. Goodbye.